Welcome to the Money Mastermind Show. Let's talk money.
Welcome to the Money Mastermind Show. I'm Glenn Craig of Free From Broke, and I'm your moderator tonight. Here are the minds that make up the Money Mastermind Show. We have Miranda Marquit of Planting Money Seeds, Peter Anderson of Bible Money Matters, Kyle Prevost of youngandthrifty.ca, and Tom Drake of Canadian Finance Blog. With us as a special guest, we have Justin Bouchard of My University Money. Welcome to our show, Justin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Glad you could be here. Today's topic is back to school, the A to Z of student finance. Before we jump into that, I want to let all of our viewers know that if they are watching from our event or Hangout page, we do have a Q&A app. So if you have any questions about student finances, student expenses, please feel free to leave a question and we'll try to get to it. We love answering student questions. We love answering viewer audience questions. So back to our topic, student finances. Where do we start? How about let's discuss what college actually costs in the U.S. and in Canada. So when we talk about college costs, what are we talking about?
So it depends really, Glenn, on if you're talking about your budget as if you lived at home or if you're living away from school, if you're including your cost of living in addition to going to school. If you're living away from home in Canada, I think it's a pretty safe bet you're going to be looking at between $18,000 to $20,000 in overall between your fees, your tuition, and obviously you can cut that down considerably if you're going to live at home. But the important thing, at least in Canada, when it comes to finances for colleges and universities, is that they're rising at much faster than the rate of general inflation, and they have been for 2 decades now. So when people say, oh, well, back in my day, school cost a lot too, they're lying. It's not comparable. I know that the older generations don't want to hear that, but it's just basic math.
And everything to note in there that, even if you had to splurge a little bit to get the education back in the day, when you walked out, you knew you were getting a job. It wasn't really a concern like it is now.
There were probably also more options for free college educations as well. You either had people maybe coming off of GI bills, or I grew up in New York, and we had the CUNY system that for the longest time was free for students. So that's not the case anymore, although it is pretty inexpensive. But maybe the more lower cost options were out there.
Yeah, I think what Kyle was saying is pretty important too, as far as the inflation of the tuition and fees at colleges. According to College Board, 4 years of tuition and fees at a private college is going to cost around $129,000. And in 18 years, they estimate it's going to be around $312,000. So that's quite a jump. If you're looking at a public university as an in-state resident, it currently is going to cost somewhere around $38,300. 18 years, it's going to be $92,200. So, just 18 years from now, when some of our kids are going to be going to school, the costs are going to be astronomical if something doesn't change.
I was going to say it's a good thing my son's only 10 years out, I guess. I don't know.
Well, and here's the problem with trying to measure education costs is that nobody actually pays the sticker price. It's when you look at, especially in the States with all the scholarships and stuff that you guys put forth, and in Canada with all of our tax credits, which you can actually throw up to your parents. So if your parents make a very high income, they can take advantage of the higher tax credits. And the problem is trying to figure out exactly what everyone is paying and sort of who should be paying what, whether we should be giving the same tax breaks to everyone or whether access for everyone should be our main goal. But suffice to say, the debt loads coming out are increasing by leaps and bounds in both Canada and the USA. So either students have grown substantially more irresponsible with their money, which I don't believe is the case. Everyone always enjoyed beer, as far as I know, or costs are rising.
Well, and I think one of the things in the United States that's very challenging right now is that you have some assistance and some help for the really low income, and then you have the high income people who can afford to go, but there's this increasing number of people in the middle who don't qualify for some of the government aid and some of the programs, some of the need-based programs, but they don't make enough to make up for the rising cost of college. And that's actually becoming a very big problem here in the United States when it comes to paying for college. Is there's this widening gap, just as, we have this widening wealth gap or whatever, but we have this widening gap between, for people in a certain income range that are finding it very difficult to pay for college because the resources just are not there and they cannot afford the rising cost.
That's kind of the gray area with a lot of Canadian families. Like a lot of people I know, they couldn't get student aid because both of their parents worked.
Right. Essentially,
they made just enough income where they could barely support you going through school, or not at all, but enough that you couldn't get financial aid on your own until you're, what is that, Kyle, 21, I think you have to be before you're cut loose or the cord's cut?
You have to be out of school for 4 years, and you can't be married to anyone to be considered an independent. So what's actually happening in a lot of places in Canada is people are just waiting till 21 or 22 to go to school, where it's only their income that counts. I know my fiance was taking out some student loans, and she had very minimal student loans because, like Justin said, her 2-income family was right on that line, more or less. And then all of a sudden, one year, not only did she get loans, she got like $5,000 worth of grants that she didn't even apply for. And she was the same kid going to school with the same parents, but now she was technically considered an independent. And I don't know
financial need.
Right. I don't know if there's an easy way to fix that, but it's certainly a weird system where stuff like that happens.
I think what you're saying, too, about getting grants that she didn't know she was possible for her to get, I think it's important for students as they're going into college and thinking about where they're going to go to consider all those scholarship programs and grant programs and make sure that they fill out applications at the student aid website for the government, to the free application for federal student aid for here in the U.S., or go to websites like FastWeb, the College Board, and do searches for scholarships and other grant programs that they can qualify for. I think you'd be surprised at how many programs there are out there for students that people didn't even realize were there.
Yeah, and I think, too, to ask your school what kind of aid they have available. I know of a couple of schools out west where they'll give you a scholarship, after your first semester. They'll actually give you certain amount of aid or certain amount of scholarship money based on your GPA. So if you maintain a certain GPA, they'll give you a certain, stipend. It's not like huge and it's not massive, but every little bit helps. And so I think looking at those types of schools and then looking at schools that are maybe, less expensive and that have these incentives to draw people there, maybe not very heavily attended, can also help.
One thing we're finding is scholarships that were established, because they were established, or a lot of the very specific ones were established so long ago, like, 15 or 20 years even in some cases. What they awarded every year was quite a bit of money, but with the cost of education going up so much, we're, just at my workplace, we're actually looking at tinkering with the split. Like, we have one, just off the top of my head, is like a $12,000 scholarship, and we award that. We split it as many ways as we could to kind of cover everyone who is eligible. But it doesn't really cover quite a bit. I mean, if you have 10 people going for it, it's not that much money for everybody. So if you only give it to 2 people and give one person $8,000, the other $4,000, all of a sudden you're starting to cover a big chunk of their school, and it makes it a bigger nest egg. So I mean, every school's going to have their different systems. A lot of them are actually automatic scholarships based on your application and your acceptance, on your grades, and like you said, if maintaining them for a lot of the really good ones, you have to maintain the GPA. But I think hopefully that the scholarships will change to kind of have a bigger impact. Hopefully it'll draw more people to apply for them.
So let's go into maybe what these college costs are. You talked about, Justin, what some of these scholarships, you could even get a big scholarship and it doesn't really affect a lot of what's out there. And we talk about the cost of college. So what are those costs? It's not just tuition, right? I mean, there are other costs that people need to take into consideration.
It depends on where you live. I'm familiar with the Canadian system. if you are a Canadian, I mean, international students will pay 3 times the amount as the Canadian students will, or the local students. I mean, that's the same in the States too, I think. But I would say about half the cost, at least in the prairies, half the cost is your living arrangements, or even more. Probably 60% of your costs are your housing and just your everyday living expenses. On the West Coast and the East Coast, your tuition gets pretty high, and also your living gets pretty high too, I suppose. But your housing is just as much, if not more, than your tuition. And when I mean housing, I mean you have your rent, you have your entertainment, you're just the general cost of taking care of yourself. And when people loosely budget the amounts, they forget a lot of things that they actually need. The best way to go about doing it is not making it before you go, but make your budget once you're actually established and living there living wherever you are for a bit, because it's the little things. I mean, you didn't have to pay, let's say for utilities, you didn't have to pay water back home, but now you do because you're in the city, or little things like taking a bus. These costs add up, and that's another $200 a month that you didn't normally spend before. So the best thing you can do is try to find someone, or if you know someone who went to school there, and just kind of see what their spending habits are like, and you try to gauge that for whatever you're going to walk into.
Another interesting movement in terms of tuition as a percentage of the overall cost, guys, is universities they're selling a product at the end of the day, and they're getting really good at advertising. And so what they do is they throw out the number for tuition. They say tuition is X dollars, or else their provincial or state government in the USA will say, no problem. We're going to put a regulation in place so that tuition doesn't rise. And the only issue then is that universities tack on. Justin wrote a great article on My University Money. You can check it out. It's all the extras that get added on. When you actually take a look at your quote-unquote tuition bill, there's fees to use the gym. There's fees for public transportation. There's stuff called like homework fees, technology fees. I paid a field trip fee in courses where I never left my classroom. I took an online course one time and paid a field trip fee. Where was my field trip? I was sitting at home on my computer. So all those fees, alumni fees, all these different things. Why am I paying an alumni fee as an active student? Anyhow, those fees are adding up, and they're taking up a bigger percentage of the overall pie.
Well, put it this way: I took one course, 2 years ago. I was working at the university, and the fees were more than my course. I had to pay student union fees and all the ancillary fees. It was. I think the course was like $350 or $400, and it came up to about $1,000 total. So yeah, I probably paid $600 in fees. If I would have taken 2 courses, it would have been better, but...
In Brandon last year, for one of my master's courses, I actually had to pay an $18 semester fee to the campus bar. And my response was, if you at a campus bar cannot make a profit on your own, you do not belong in the entrepreneurship practice.
Wait. Does the bar subsidize anything back to the student? Because maybe that's worth it.
Maybe if you know the bartender.
So, wait.
One of those things to carry it over the summer.
So the campus bar in Canada couldn't make a profit without being subsidized by fees.
Well, you got to remember that all the people that work there are unionized, so they're all earning $15 an hour.
I want a student job though. Yeah, that's the other thing. So yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, what kind of student jobs can you get to help defray all these costs, right?
Well, the student jobs. Sorry, Pete. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say before we got too far, I found a study kind of breaking down what the spending was for the average college student, and it was done by O'Donnell and Associates. Found that 3% was spent on transportation, 4% on books and supplies, 8% on other expenses like healthcare, 19% on tuition fees, 26% on room and board, and then 40% on discretionary spending. Entertainment, apparel, services, travel, vacation, and other things like that. So if you look at that breakdown, there still is quite a bit of discretionary spending going on by students. And I'm going to guess that a lot of that isn't being done with cash that they have in their account. A lot of it's going on to credit cards. So, sorry, go ahead.
I completely lost. Where was I? Oh, jobs. Yes.
Jobs.
We are noticing just with with the struggles that students have, it comes down to finances, but then they're struggling, they can barely make ends meet, and their grades are suffering because they're stressed, and then they jump into a job to help cover some of these costs, but then now they have less time to study and the grades deteriorate even more. So before you even jump in a job, I would try to cut costs. The same person, one student in particular I'm talking about, they had like a $200 a month phone bill, and they didn't make a lot of I don't think they made any international calls. This is all texting and data usage and just voice data, like within Manitoba, within Winnipeg. And like I have a $60 or $65 a month plan, and it's pretty much unlimited everything. So the student didn't do their homework to find out maybe you can cut that cost down by over half. So because of that, and I mean, you got to find what your needs are, and then make whatever's important matter to you. So before you jump into a job, I would try to figure that out first. But as for jobs, there's retail on every campus, and the campuses are usually hubs for the city. There's drives a lot of traffic. I mean, just our campus is 30,000, and Brandon's probably a lot less. But I mean, just trying to think of the bigger schools. Well, they're all over 15,000, I would say, or most of them. And they're always advertising for student jobs everywhere, right? And every student union on campus, they will have a small armory of staff, because they have to work around everyone's time schedule, or the course schedule, I should say. So there's a lot of staff, but maybe they won't get so many hours. But maybe a flexible arrangement is probably best for a student.
And I think too, I mean, here in the United States, one of the things you can do is apply for work study. So when you're filling out your FAFSA, your free application for financial student aid, you need to make sure that you check that you're willing to do work study, because even if you don't qualify for a grant, and if you qualify for a student loan and everything, you might be able to qualify for work study as well. And these are special jobs on campus that are reserved for students who, maybe do fall a little bit in that gap that we were talking about earlier. So that is one way. I mean, it's not the same thing as a scholarship or a grant, and it's not as super fabulous, but it is one way to guarantee that you are, if you qualify for work study, then you are guaranteed a certain amount of work as a student. And so that is one way to kind of.
That sounds a lot like a co-op program. So it's like one term they work and one term they go to classes? Oh,
no, you work during the whole thing. But
okay.
they cap it at like 20 hours a week. And, and you might not get that full 20. You might like have between 10 and 20. But, you are guaranteed that, you are guaranteed a certain amount of work so that you can at least earn some money towards your schooling.
What some programs have is they have a co-op program. I know engineering's big on it, computer science, and I think agriculture is dipping into that now. So where you do work or you go to classes for one semester, you take one semester off, so 4 months on, 4 months off, and you jump into the industry. What's nice, it takes you a year longer to get your degree or your degree, but you have a year more of experience. So when you're graduating with your class and all the resumes look the same, you'll at least have 1 year of experience plus a little bit of financial stability along the way.
So let's get back to this job here. When they find a job and they have at least a decent work balance, how do students go about using the money and using it wisely, building a budget? I think most adults who are in the workforce are having a hard time doing that. So how does a student who's taking a course load get their head around it?
Yeah, that's sort of the I won't say $1 million question, but probably the $10,000 question for a lot of students, Glenn, is these kids come in and unfortunately our school system hasn't prepared them in any way. And for most families at this point, I think talking about sex is less taboo than talking about money. So these kids go in and they get, $8,000 student loan, or they go in, they got a $2,000 credit limit on a credit card the day after they hit campus that they got with, a campus logo on it. And they have access to all this income, or this seemingly income all of a sudden, and they have no experience budgeting anything. one thing you can do, Justin's being shy in saying that we have and has not yet mentioned that we wrote a book together. There's lots of good stuff in there. He's also got a great site over at My University Money that sets up a budget template for students. It's slanted to Canadian students, so one or two of the costs won't make some sense to American viewers. I'm sure there's similar things on U.S. student sites, and it'll just outline for you, the basic breakdown of what do you think you're going to spend on books. You hadn't considered that you're going to have an electricity bill or whatever the case may be. So that's a good place to start, is look for a sample budget and some easy software. We've mentioned 15 different types of software on this show before that you can use to budget super easy. It's just a matter of will more than anything else.
Yeah, we've mentioned several times you need a budget on this show, but it's a special interest to college students because that program is actually normally $60 and it's free for college students. So if you buy that, you need a budgeting program as a college student. You just need to send them an email and let them know that you're a college student, and they'll give you a special code to use it for free, basically. So, there's 84% of college students admitted that they need more education on financial management. And I really think they, need to focus on just learning the basics. Figuring out how to do a basic budget, figuring out your income that's coming in and what you're spending, and making sure they line up and that you're not spending a ton of money on those credit cards that you got the free T-shirt with when you signed up as a freshman. Again, 84% of undergrads have at least one credit card, and 21% of them have between $3,000 and $7,000 in credit card debt already as college students. So that's a ton of debt. That's overspending on those discretionary things like we talked about before. 40% of their budget is discretionary spending. So
I was a poster boy for bad finances in college. As soon as I got my student loan, within the first week, I ended up with a really nice car stereo, but it didn't leave too much money when I actually needed it. And then I got the credit card, and that became how I was paying for things like food and stuff without necessarily even a budget to pay that off. So it's definitely a place where you learn how terrible your finances are at that age.
Well, and the problem is how we're presenting budgets too, right? I mean, young people, 17 to 19-year-olds, hear the word budget, and it's like the most boring word that can possibly be. And it's really not that hard. That's the thing. All you're really doing is like tossing in your things that you have to pay for, or else you have to live on the street, or like go hunting for scraps, I guess. And then from there, it's just prioritizing what expenses you want. And it's really not that difficult, but for a lot of students, they just can't have it all. You can't go out drinking beer every night and go out for supper and go to concerts and put a new car stereo in. You can't do all those things. You can maybe pick one of those things, right? So that's what it's really about, is just basic prioritizing. But it's one of these topics and words that has all this weird energy or reputation around it, and it's super hard to break through, I find.
It doesn't even have to be an accurate one. It can just be a ballpark budget, and it's still better than nothing, because at least you have some idea, and you tweak it as you go. You don't once you do it in September, that you don't just leave it, right? As long as you keep adapting it, it's definitely better off.
Yeah, a budget doesn't have to be something that's so granular. Every can of beer that you're putting in there, it could be something. This is the money that's coming in. This is the money that's going out. Do they match each other? Is one bigger than the other? Let's work from there.
Yeah.
When I was an economics major, I took as an elective a personal finance class, and it was a great class. I mean, it covered everything from budgets, going down to insurance and wills. I mean, it just covered everything. At that point, I was already a personal finance blogger, so I was on the edge of my seat every class, rocking that class. I did quite well in it. But I don't think the other students there who were much younger than me understood my enthusiasm for it. There were a lot of students there that were kind of bitching and moaning and didn't understand why they had to go through it all. And I mean, that's the thing. It was a great class, and I think a lot of students could have learned a lot from that class. But it was an elective if you were an economics major. So how many people in campus are that? And it's still, like you said, it's a boring subject. It's not something that people want to talk about.
I can just see Glenn at the front of the class, like setting the curve, and everyone behind him, like snickering at him, like, look at that dude up there, what an idiot.
Don't ask another question.
Did you say
Anything
you should
but
go website? What?
I think they should have just taken a look at your website and then given you an A in the class, right? Just
I didn't try to push that because I didn't want it to be wrong either and have the teacher say, that post you wrote, we really got to knock it down.
You did mention one interesting thing there, Glenn, that doesn't get talked about much when it comes to students, and that's insurance. And many students don't understand, like, depending on what sort of housing insurance their parents have, they may be covered in terms of their own possessions wherever they move to, whether it's living in on campus or off campus, but they may not. It all depends on what their parents have for housing insurance. So many people are actually living in apartments and they don't have what's known as tenants insurance. They think that the landlord's insurance covers all their stuff, covers their computer if something, a house fire happens or whatever. And that's not the case. You need tenants insurance in almost every situation. And I mean, even in the US, I got a lot of buddies that went to school down there and they didn't have health insurance. They did not take up, the campus rates for health insurance. They decided to go without. And I mean, sure, you're in a low risk category, but do you really want to take the risk of getting hit with a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 bill when you can't afford it or when you can least afford it?
And for people who are watching us, that would be renter's insurance in the U.S., which, yeah, same here. It's relatively inexpensive, and a lot of people don't have it, people who are out of school included. And here in the U.S., a recent law was put into effect that I think until, is it age 27, that you can stay under your parents' health plan. I don't know the exact stipulations of that offhand.
25 in Canada.
26.
And is that in every state, guys? That's in every state now?
Yes. It's under the Affordable Care Act, and it's 26. Or, of course, if you, well, actually, even if you're married, if you don't have other coverage, you can still be on your parents, even if you're married. My brother and his wife are on their separate parents' insurances while they were going to school. So something to think about, I guess. You can still go off mom and dad even when you're married.
Even with as far as the insurance, but going off your parents' plan, it still might be better to go get your own, because I mean, how much, even if you get your parents to pay for it, because how many, let's say you have a dorm room and you don't have that many possessions in it. I mean, the home insurance, so if you do get robbed or something goes missing, it's going to just raise the premiums of the parents' place of their insurance when they actually have to put in a big claim if they have a fire or something, right? So, and tenants insurance is pretty cheap. I mean, you can insure, depending on the rates, but $10,000 or $20,000 worth of things for $150, which never hurts. But there's always a couple other options that you want to get. I mean, if you have a really expensive ring or computer, you might want to put a rider on that, so it's separate from your original insurance, so you can it's not tied to your home. So like this computer I'm using now, I have a small rider on it because I take it around everywhere, and if I drop it, it's not the end of the world, and I just sleep better knowing that. Or the little $20 cost a year for sewer backups. Apparently that happens in Winnipeg, so you always kind of want to be prepared for just the small amount it is, just in case. You never know, right?
So students, they're getting maybe their first real income, maybe in a part-time job. They might have had jobs before college, but now they really need to do something with this money, possibly, if they're not being taken care of in other ways. What accounts should a student look into opening to help handle their money? Do they need it? Can they just get the cash and just pay anything out from there? What does a student need to start considering?
Something with no fees. Something with honestly.
Cash is no fee, right? I could keep it under the mattress for free.
Yeah, that's true. I would recommend anything that's I started with a local, the bank that was in my hometown. That's the one I had. Luckily enough, every ATM on campus, there was a monopoly, the same bank, which is handy. But in Canada, everyone uses debit cards, so the transaction costs are pretty cheap. But there's two banks in Canada, that's PC Financial and Tangerine, have free banking all the way through. You don't have to be a student. Many of the bank accounts, they have a student account, but once you graduate, they will start charging you fees. And I just recently switched because I stopped being lazy. It's just much nicer. You don't have to worry about getting dinged. It's kind of like long distance on a phone bill. Every time you see it on your bill, you get mad at it. So, but any low maintenance, low fee, or no fee account is good to have. Then you can kind of automate some of your payments and just use that as a buffer instead of hiding it in your mattress.
So you'd say a basic checking account and maybe a basic savings account?
Yeah, I mean, both of those are good, and you can, I use credit card for everyday purchasing, but, I pay it off in full, but I use that, all the transfers online are free, so I make use of that. You can even I could pay you for free, for instance. It just, you keep your transaction costs down, and, then you have your checking and your saving. If you have a lot of money kicking around, you want to float it into your savings as much as possible to take advantage of the higher interest rate.
So you mentioned something there, credit cards. Should students have credit cards? What type of students should?
Double-edged sword. I jumped in and grabbed a credit card, and once as soon as you have it, it's you have a lot of money and you spend it all the time. But
you got to test it out, right?
Absolutely, red hot. And it's good for the everyday things because you don't have to carry a pile of money or change, or and you can see everything's well documented, and you also build up a credit rating, and not to mention all those points you get or the cash back. I recommend it just because it's you can use it more. Like you can you could buy things online, and you could subscribe to you can put everything on your let's say your cell phone bill. You can automate that to goes to your credit card, so you don't forget anything, and it acts as a little bit of a backbone. So you have you're automatically more credible with a credit card. I mean, you can leave your credit card at a hotel and they trust you not to damage the room, right? Instead, if you didn't, you'd have to put down like a $300 damage deposit. So it's nice to have, but you really have to have the self-control of not going crazy with it. Or, I would recommend getting something with a low balance in case you misplace it at a bar. Not saying anyone here did that, but that, or if you get hacked, or if you had a public computer, then at least it's a small amount, relatively small amounts, so you don't have to worry about someone running off with $5,000 of your money.
So you have to have the discipline as a student to be able to say, even though you're giving me this much of a limit, knock it back down. Like, I don't need $5,000 right off the bat. Even though you say I can handle it, don't give it to me. Give me $1,000. Give me $500 or something like that.
That, if you can do that, your self-control or your self-discipline is pretty much there. It's kind of like student loans. Like, we'll give you $45,000, or better yet, pre-mortgages. I mean, you're approved for $450,000. You can get in a lot of trouble with that kind of money, and there's no way you'd be able to afford a home like that. So, same thing. If you get a credit card with $5,000 or $10,000, lower that down. Even there's no, like, how often do you make a purchase over $500 as a student? I mean, besides your tuition.
That could be a book.
I want a $5,000 student credit card, right?
Well, I think it comes.
Go ahead, Peter.
Go ahead. Okay, I think it just comes down to knowing yourself and whether or not you can trust yourself with having that credit card. I know for me, moving away from home and going to college was one of the first times I really had to be responsible for my own money, because I've been living at home before that. And I remember coming into school as a freshman and getting that proverbial T-shirt for a credit card. And I think the credit card debt on that card lasted longer than that T-shirt did. His T-shirt was gone within a year or two, but the credit card debt lasted me all 4 years of college. So, it's one of those things, you got to know whether you can have that temptation of having that easy credit there. And, all your friends are going to be going on that spring break trip to Florida or wherever. And it's an easy temptation to say, okay, I'll just put that $2,500 on that credit card, and I'll go have fun. I'll pay it off later. But
future Peter's problem.
Exactly, it's future Peter. I'm not going to worry about it.
Future Miranda had a lot of stuff to deal with after she was done with college, because future Miranda took out student loans even though she had scholarships and credit cards. I went to Las Vegas. College Miranda had lots of fun that future Miranda had to take care of later.
I think that's it's true in every one of us here.
Well, for a lot of people, it feels like you pretty much won the lottery too, because like before college, I never had a balance of 4 digits kind of thing, but now between a student loan that's in the thousands and credit card that's in the thousands, like that's way more money than I had ever seen in my own accounts before.
Yeah.
I remember.
I'm a big John Oliver fan, and he recently had this segment where he was explaining sort of an unrelated topic, but he had this one nugget that I loved, and it was, if you want to do something evil, the secret in North America is to just put it inside something super boring. And I find that's basically interest rates, trying to describe that to university and college students, because it sounds, again, super boring like budgeting, but the interest rate difference between student loan, where you don't pay any interest until the loan matures, if it's a government student loan, and then, so in other words, when you graduate, for those listening, and a student line of credit, which, you know, is a little bit more like a credit card, but still primarily at a much lower rate, and then a credit card's interest rates, the difference there, you know, considering what Peter told us about, you know, the average amount of credit card debt that many students are running around with, the difference there can mean hundreds and hundreds of dollars every single year for students. And if they don't understand how interest rates work, the banks are going to love you because they understand how interest rates work. And if you haven't noticed yet, there's a lot of rich people running around banks. So, figure it out.
And the tricky thing too is you get that first credit card and maybe they give you a low rate. I think my first credit card was something like $200, $250, a limit on it. And I think it was a retail card even. And I was pretty good with it. I didn't go crazy with it, and I spent a little bit, but you know, I built up some credit. So then I was able to get another credit card, and then I was able to get another credit card. And one day I walked into Sam Ash Music Store, and they said, "Hey, you could buy on credit. Sign up." And I went, "Sure, I've been getting credit left and right." And they gave me something like, it was either $3,000 or $5,000 on that card, and that was way above any other limit. And honestly, that scared the bejesus out of me, because I knew that was a store that I could easily spend $1,000 and just walk out with one item. So luckily, I never used that card. But, you know, as you are building up that credit, it is a double-edged sword again, because you get many more offers now, and those limits start going up and up. So you do have to be careful.
And everyone has a credit card. Everybody. So, like you said, you walk into a store and they ask you, it's the first thing they ask you, sign up for a credit card. So what do you do?
Yeah.
I think one of the hard things too is, for me, you know, I had my first credit card, I had the $500 limit, and I was really good with it. I'd use it, then I'd pay it off, I'd use it, and then I paid it off. And after about 4 months, that limit went up to $1,500. It went from $500 to $1,500. I didn't even have to get a new credit card. The credit card I already had was like, hey, we're rewarding you for being awesome. But then, kind of like what Tom was saying, all of a sudden I wasn't being awesome anymore, because it looked like this huge amount, and you know, I pay it down a little bit and then make really good progress. And once I made really good progress, then they up my limit again. And
So nice of them.
I know, right?
You're awesome.
So yeah, that's right. But then I was slowly being less awesome as it went along, and by the end there, I mean, I actually still have this credit card, and it has, you know, it's got like a $4,000 limit on it. It's my oldest credit card. I still have it, but it just sort of kept growing throughout my college years. And even if I didn't have the balance completely paid off, if I was making solid payments on it, they just keep bumping it up.
Do you feel nostalgic now when you go to use it? It's like you flash back to 18-year-old Miranda. Or...
I don't use it. It doesn't even have rewards. They gave me a little bag when I got it, you know, a duffel bag. It was cooler than the T-shirt, and so it doesn't even have rewards. I don't even hardly use it for anything. It's just there because of the age of it, because it's so old. It like single-handedly ups the length of my credit history.
It's like an old friend. You just can't say goodbye.
That's right.
Yeah, I just want to note that. Sorry, Tom. I just want to mention that I got a koosh ball out of my credit card.
That's lame, man.
Yeah,
Got rid
no,
of
Well,
on that spring day on campus, it was pretty useful, but after that day, it pretty much wasn't.
Man, at least my duffel bag, it got like 3 good years of use out of that cheap duffel bag.
I got one to top you guys. I'm embarrassed, but I will tell you. I got a box of cookies. President's Choice cookies. Did you not?
wow. Desperate.
Fantastic.
They were
Fantastic.
really good, though.
So
Yeah,
should we make a chart? We've got the cush ball on one end and the duffel bag on the other. Where do the cookies fall?
Ask the koosh ball.
Mine was fitness. I was staying healthy.
I was not.
I think the point of all this is maybe that we, as a student going into college, you really need to be careful about your money, basically. You know, what kind of debt you're taking on, whether it's student loans or credit card debts, and, you know, be careful about what you're spending. You know, if you're not careful, you can end up with a ton of debt. The Project on Student Debt, a nonprofit group, says that 15% of borrowers default within the first 3 years of entering repayment on their student loans. So, you know, just think about the amount of people that are having a hard time finding a job these days even after they've graduated college. And ROI on a college education isn't quite what it used to be. So be careful about what kind of debt you're saddling yourself with, because it's not always going to be a perfectly rosy future where you're going to get a high-paying job right off the bat.
Yeah, it's like students, yeah, you're 18, but you actually do have to really be an adult at that point. It's not, adulthood isn't when you get that quote-unquote real job after you graduate. You need to start building those adult budgeting money skills early on. And if you can get your head around that by the time you're out there in the real workforce, you've got a leg up at least.
One of the great things, though, is that as intimidating as all this sounds, like be good with your money and budget and learn about interest rates, one of the great things is there's a super lot of fun stuff to do when you're 18 and on campus and are broke. Like there's free stuff. There's all sorts of intramural sports teams. There's all sorts of free plays and performances and art shows and speakers coming in and different clubs that are full of geeks in whatever field you're geeky in. And all those things cost little to no money. I know in Manitoba, at least, in many places in Canada, it's free to go watch the campus sports teams. That was a great night of entertainment. It was a lot of fun to sit there and yell mean stuff at opposing schools and good stuff for your team. And that all costs no money. So it doesn't mean you have to live like a monk. That's sort of Justin and I's whole thing is, like, we had a lot of fun, but we didn't go broke. At least we went, if we did, we just went down to zero. We didn't go below zero into debt territory.
Although I bet some of your university fees covered some of those free events and so forth.
True.
Too.
Right. Yeah.
So take advantage of things you're already paying for, right?
That's right.
If you have like a skill set, I know this is something my roommate did, but he was trained in first aid CPR. So he volunteered and he got to go, he went to Jets games and he went to concerts just because they need those type of people, the Taylor Swift concert. I remember he went to that. And the worst thing he had to treat was like heat stroke or something. So you get to go to these things. You walk around the aisles, and I mean, for the most part, they're not rowdy by any means. But you go out and you get to go to these events that the ticket price could be over $100 for free.
What are some other ways that students can save? I mean, I know there's lots of student discounts that you can get if all you have is either a student ID or a valid email address. In the United States, it's just a .edu address. If you have something like that, you can just get a ton of discounts out there. What are the others?
You can do what Kyle does and keep your student card after you graduate and still use it.
Hey, I'm a master's student now. I'm milking that for at least 5 more years.
Same here. I stayed a student for a long time, and I had a valid email address, and there's all sorts of corporate discounts. Microsoft will give you discounts.
Oh, for sure.
All sorts of retail stores. I just went to EMS, Eastern Mountain Sports, and they said, 15% off for students. All you have to do is show an ID card, and you don't even have to do that. You could just say, hey, look, I forgot my ID, and they'll probably give it to you. Not that you should be dishonest about it, but there's plenty of places that will give you a nice chunk of change as a discount. So if you're not using those discounts, you're really kind of losing money there, or you're not using your money as wisely as you should.
Yeah, like I haven't been on a quote-unquote real phone plan yet. I've been on a student phone plan the whole time. I'm now in this awkward position where I have to figure out if the teacher discount or the student discount gets me a better discount, which is sort of a fun position to be in. But it's weird. Like I talked about this a little bit in our coupon episode, where there's like there's this weird stigma for using coupons or asking for a discount. And it's too bad because there's a lot of them aimed at the student demographic, especially if you go to places close to a large campus. And I just don't know why this exists. It's too bad. Like it's people. All my buddies could have told you where the cheap wig night was, but yet none of us would have ever asked for a discount somewhere because that would have been like admitting that you were a broke student, which we all were.
Well, I think everyone waited behind the person with 60 coupons, and not like half of them were for the store. The other half didn't work. I think everyone experienced that. And I hate holding up a line, but with the discounts, like they are quick and painless, or a lot of them are. And like Glenn said, they don't even need ID half the time.
You should check your student welcome packet too. I mean, a lot of the time you just like throw that out, but a lot of schools actually have little cards that go in, and different local businesses will put coupons in there, or they'll advertise the discounts that they offer to students. So, go through your welcome packet. Don't ignore it. Take a look at it and see what's available in your area, because you might be surprised.
Yeah, just like the purpose of coupons. The companies give you coupons so that you use their product, so that you build brand loyalty. They want you to keep coming back, and all these local businesses and other such things, they're competing for your dollars because they know that at 18, if they could get you hooked on their brand or whatever they are, maybe when you're 30, you're still buying it. So they want to give you discounts if you want to look for them.
One other big area where students tend to lose a ton of cash is on their personal conveyance or their vehicle. Because oftentimes students are buying older cars or trucks, and then they're paying a lot of maintenance fees. And in Canada, at least, if you want to take public transportation as a student, it's almost free by the time they give you your student discount. And then in many campuses now, they make you pay for it, like Peter was saying, in the fees anyway. So here you're already paying for, a public transit fee or a public transit pass for your school year. And then you go and you're adding all sorts of gasoline costs, maintenance costs, car insurance costs. And man, that was a real eye opener for me. I thought it was like buy my car and budget, $50 a week for gas, and I'm good to go. And little did I know how much that car was going to cost me.
I remember when I was younger, I had at least a couple of situations where somebody was willing to even just give me a car. For either just a couple $100 or free. And I couldn't take it because the insurance alone would have been, a couple grand, and I just didn't have money to pay for insurance, so I couldn't take the car.
Although you should, while we're talking about discounts, you should ask about the good student discount. A lot of auto insurance companies will offer a good student discount. So that's something to think about because you can use that and get a little extra money. Well, I guess you're not getting extra money. You're saving a little extra money. So that's another discount to think about is if you have good grades, you can save on your auto insurance.
Here's another one that always bugged me. Again, you automatically pay for this, and your fees often, like Peter was saying, is the campus gym facility or the physical education facility. Most of the time in most schools, the football team or the wrestling team, whatever, will have a beautiful facility, and then the rest of the students will have a slightly less or a lot less beautiful facility to use. But bottom line is it's cheap, and oftentimes it's free if you're a student, or you've already paid for it if you're a student. And yet I'd see so many of my friends that would be like, no, I got this beautiful new place. I get a month of free personal training, and I'm paying $70 a month, but if I buy like the next 6 years, I get 10% off. And what are you doing? Like, is your goal to have a sweat? Like, what are you doing there that's so important? Do they give you like a gold-plated water bottle? Like, I don't get it.
And they're probably not using it. That's the sad thing, right?
Realistically, yeah. I mean, most of my buddies actually did use it, but still, if you're just lifting weights, what does it matter if the paint is chipped on them or not?
Another area where I see students every day, and I talk to a few of them, and one of them said just because for buying a little fridge, he saved hundreds of dollars a month because he started, I wouldn't call this cooking, but he started kind of pre-buying some meals and started buying bulk. So he was spending $600 on meals alone, and you can cook. You can cook for, like, I don't know, 2, even for 400. You can save a lot of money if you cook, and you cook your own meals and prepare them yourself. And that, planning in advance and time management, so you're not wondering what you're going to eat that day, but maybe, you plan a few days in advance. And that alone could save you hundreds of dollars.
Let's go to another place to save. One last place, maybe. Textbooks. I always feel like textbooks are a scam almost. The professors go in and add 3 sentences to one chapter just so you have to buy the new edition again. That can eat up a lot of money. What are some quick ways we can save on that?
Go to the class first, double check. Or talk to someone who's taken the class before, or there's enough online forums. Some profs, we mentioned in our book, they will mention, 6 books, and they'll only, look at one chapter in this book. That book, or all the books that are on the class syllabus, will be in the libraries. I think there's some sort of obligation the professor will need to have these books available for students to use. And, make yourself a home at the library. You can even use them there if you don't want to shell out the cash for them. To be honest, I've only bought about 2 or 3 books, and they were mostly my last year. There always knew people that had them, and I only needed the books just to get the actual questions from them. All the other information I was able to look up in other sources. So, or you buy used editions.
Yeah, if you check out, we got in big trouble in the book for saying don't go to campus bookstores, but screw it, don't go to campus bookstores ever.
It's going to be convenient.
If you go online, if you have the cash and you're willing to sacrifice the money for the time, I guess there is the convenience factor. But even the used books at the bookstore, I guarantee there's better deals if you live in residence or if you live in a building close to campus that has a lot of students in it. There's going to be stuff up on the bulletin boards, or someone will put it up in the elevator, just saying if you need these textbooks, especially if you're in your first or second year and taking a lot of general courses, you can get those books for next to nothing. And also, if there is a new edition put out, be aware of that. Oftentimes, you're buying like the 9th edition of something. It looks exactly the same as the 3rd edition, like Glenn was saying. And you can get away with, sure, when the professor says it's on page 197, it might be on, 191. But you can get away with saving 80-90% of the cost just by looking online and using some basic textbook tricks.
That's the thing. Like, how much does biology change? Not very much. Right, and in Canada, in the States, there's a lot of textbook rental services available, and I didn't find one in Canada, but maybe it's getting there. But you can also rent books.
Yeah, so Chegg.com and Nevo.com, and then Amazon lets you rent textbooks. So you can do that as well. Another thing to do is ask your professors about, to get electronic versions, which can sometimes be cheaper. And my husband, who's an awesome professor, if he only has like a couple chapters reading, he just has them done as PDFs and then uploads it as electronic, and then they can get it from the online version. Most schools now have online access stuff, so I don't know. The textbook thing annoys me. There's really no reason. It's a terrible waste of resources, and it's horribly expensive. So it's just stupid all around.
I found that they keep trying to come up with new ways to get around how cheap a used textbook is. So some classes, like let's say it's a math class, you'll have the textbook that you can get cheaper used, but then there'll be some sort of problems book that they throw in that you can only get new for some reason. So you still have to buy the giant package. Or I've even had a case where you have an online class and all the homeworks are going to be through this online program that includes the online book. So you have to kind of buy into the system in order to take the class. So they're doing what they can to try to keep you paying, which is really a shame.
Well, I don't know who makes the money on it, because it's really not the bookstores. And I know some of the professors who write these books. Apparently, they aren't making any money, so it must be the publishers.
Oh my gosh. Yes, it is.
So we've done a pretty good job of talking about student finances and different ways students can go about getting their heads around their finances and saving some money and how to budget. So what we'd like to do here is just maybe wrap up, and we'll go around and just get some final words on student finances from each of us. So let's start with Kyle. What's your final word on student finances?
One more boring way that you can save money by learning a little terminology is to just take a quick spin through how students can save on taxes. If you're doing your own taxes or someone else is doing them for you, make sure they know what they're doing, because there's all sorts of tax breaks for students no matter what state or province you live in, and you can save a lot of money, and it's going to come back to you in a tax refund at the very end of the year, right at the end of the semester when you need it most. So pay attention to that stuff.
And Miranda, your final word on student finances.
I think the best thing you can do is track your spending, pay attention to what you're doing, and decide, put together a spending plan and keep up with it, and just keep it under control and don't get too crazy about the spending. Really, I mean, it's fun, it's great. I loved going to Las Vegas 3 times a semester, but it'll kill you in the end. So really keep it under control, and there are times that I wish I'd only gone like once a semester. So keep it under control and make a spending plan and keep with it.
And Peter, your final word on student finances.
Well, my final word is just that remember that nobody's going to care more about your money than you. And I think Kyle said that on a previous episode, and it's really true. College can be a time when it's easy to kind of just let things go and figure that you're going to worry about it later. But the problem is if you do that, you're going to end up with thousands in student loans, thousands in credit card debt, and that future you that we talked about is going to be in deep trouble. So make sure you're caring about your finances, figure out some basic things, start just a simple budget, even on pen and paper if you want, and just go from there. But make sure you're paying attention.
Tom, your final word on student finances?
Well, we've talked about how easy it is to spend, so don't give in to the peer pressure of spending like everybody else. Like, just because everybody else has terrible finances doesn't mean you have to. So just admit you're a broke student and act like it and spend like it, and you'll be much better off.
And Justin, you're a guest tonight. Let's close with you. What are your final words on student finances?
Well, I'd recommend every student to take a read through More Money for Beer and Textbooks. No, I would say apply early and apply often. Apply for every scholarship you can and do it in early enough. I mean, you can get scholarships if you don't even meet the criteria just because no one applies for these things. And apply early so you know and apply to everything so you know you have options. In case you don't get in one school, you have 3 other backups. And in my career, I mean, I'm running a residence building, and you'd be surprised how many people don't apply until a week before the move-in date, and everything's full. So these people don't know where they're going to live. So you have to think in advance for these things. And the more you apply yourself, the more applications you have out. It's a numbers game, and you can walk away with quite a bit of money.
Justin, this is a fun episode. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
For our audience out there, tell them a little bit about where they can find you online.
You can find me. Well, I can. You can find me at myuniversitymoney.com. We do have a Facebook page too. It's just Facebook/myuniversitymoney.com, myuniversitymoney, and Twitter at Justin Bouchard W or at myuniversitymon. Those are all the ways you can find me, or email me from using the site.
Thanks everybody for joining us tonight at the Money Mastermind Show. We love to hear comments and any follow-up questions that you may have, so please check back with moneymastermindshow.com for our show notes. And if you haven't already, please head on over to iTunes and subscribe to our podcast. And until next week, be good with your money. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thanks for joining us on the Money Mastermind Show. Get more information at moneymastermindshow.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Google+.